know what your number one reason is for not having kids. You don't owe anybody an explanation. You don't owe me an explanation, but I'm always intrigued if people are up for the conversation, what their number one reason is. For me, my number one reason is I love being alone. And ironically, people use that as a threat. Like, you're going to be so lonely, you're going to be all alone. I really love my time to myself. I'm a pretty independent person. Ever since I was a kid, I have really loved kind of the solitude of being by myself. And I know that if I was to have a kid, at least for the first number of years, that's really going to be impacted. And I just simply don't want that. So that is my number one reason. I love being alone. I'm interested to know what yours would be.
Hi people, thank you so much for stopping by. If you're coming across my channel for the very first time, thank you so much. Please consider subscribing. To my returning subscribers, thank you so much for your support, and I hope we are all doing fine. Yes, you don't owe anyone an explanation. Having children is a personal decision that does not need to trigger anyone. Since this woman asked people to share their experience, the reason why they are not having kids, well, women really came out. I'll just play the stitches from different women. So let's watch together, and I'll be back to give my own opinion. Please don't go away.
I want to know what your number one reason is for not having kids.
I never had the support system that is required to raise children in a healthy environment.
I want to know what your number one reason is for not having kids. You don't owe anybody an explanation. You don't.
I'm not having kids because I don't want them. I feel like a really important part of being a good parent is wanting to have the experience of raising a child. I don't close my eyes when I think about my future and think like, oh, I can't wait for it to be my turn. I don't look at my friends who have gotten pregnant and had babies and say, oh my gosh, I can't wait until it's my turn. Like, I don't have the want for it. And I think that's a pretty important reason to have kids. And if it's something that you are not desiring or longing for naturally, I don't think you should do it. My second reason for not having kids or making the decision to live child-free is that I have seen so many women be fulfilled by motherhood, be challenged by motherhood, be destroyed by motherhood. I've seen so many iterations of what motherhood can do, good, bad, and in between. And I just want to see what happens when a woman tries to fulfill herself with something else, with travel, with her career, with her friendships, with her romantic relationship, with her relationship with herself, through her hobbies, through her own self-discovery and expansion. Like, what does that look like? And I want to be that and experience that and be an example of that for the young women around me.
I want to know what your number one reason is for not having kids.
Having kids would not actually be what's best for me. As much as I wanted to be a parent when I was younger, and as much as I love kids and taking care of people, I have been in a caregiving position for literally the majority of my life, if not all of my life. I was parentified. I'm the eldest daughter. I was a live-in nanny for years in college. Like, I know how to take care of people. But I realized if I have kids, I'm going to want to be such a good mother that I will never really pour into myself. As a mother, I feel like ideally you want to give everything that you can to your kids. And if you're giving your kids everything, what is left for you? If you have a background of trauma, if you were neglected as a child, if your needs were not met, you kind of owe it to yourself to not have kids so that you can pour into you, because nobody really poured into you when you were younger. So now it's time for you to do that for yourself.
I want to know what your number one reason is for not having kids. You don't owe anybody an explanation. You don't.
The fear of One Direction getting back together and not being able to go. Honestly.
I want to know what your number one reason is for not having kids. You don't owe anybody an explanation. You don't.
To put it very simply, without having to explain all of my diagnoses and my childhood and everything, simply put, I know that myself as a parent would push to give my child everything I never had. Thus, I and my inner child would be extremely jealous of my child, and regardless of how much you try to hide that or not show that or not perpetuate that onto your child, you inevitably will, in one form or the other, and I don't want to do that to another human being. So yeah.
I want to know what your number one reason is for not having kids. You don't owe anybody an explanation.
My number one reason for not wanting kids is because I am a highly sensitive person. And so if I were to become a mom, it would be a challenge for me. I wouldn't trust anyone around my kid. I would shelter my kid from everything, and I would be very overprotective, very overprotective. And I know that's not healthy, but I know myself. I feel every single emotion that runs through my body. I wouldn't trust my kid going to school for 7 hours. I wouldn't trust my kid going anywhere without me. And why? I wouldn't want my kid to live like that. I wouldn't even want to live like that because I wouldn't be able to relax. I would be constantly on edge, like, where's my kid? No, like, why would I put myself through that? And then, God forbid, anything bad happens to the kid, I would delete myself.
I want to know what your number one reason is for not having kids. You don't owe anybody an explanation. You don't.
My number one reason is because I'm not a man. If I was a man, I think that I would absolutely want children. Because for one, I wouldn't have to actually go through pregnancy, birth, breastfeeding right off the bat. Somebody else gets to do that for me, which is awesome. I wouldn't really be expected to wake up in the middle of the night and nurse the baby. In fact, it would be encouraged for me to go to work every day, continue living pretty much the same life that I was living before, and there's someone else to make the kids lunches and take them to school and worry about their friends and social lives and everything. Someone to buy them clothes, groceries, take care of them at home, clean up after them. I'm not saying that dads don't do stuff, and I'm not saying that every family situation is like this. I'm just saying, if I was a man, if someone asked me if I wanted kids, there would be a lot of things and factors that I wouldn't have to take into consideration to answer the question that I do as a woman.
I want to know what your number one reason is for not having kids.
I don't have any money, and I think it would be selfish for me to bring a kid into the world and I can't give them a lifestyle that they deserve because I'm broke.
Having children is not an easy thing. Having kids comes with a lot of cost. The risk that every pregnancy is a life-threatening is another reason also. Motherhood is too much work and responsibility. This is the more reason why women mostly don't want kids. This world is a horrible place. Bringing someone here to this horrible world without their consent, you need to be prepared and take full responsibility, which others don't want to do that. Some people were raised by narcissistic parents, so that trauma they went through makes them to be child-free. Some people don't want kids because they can't afford them. They don't want to bring kids in this world and just to make them suffer. But the truth is, we will never be done with suffering. Suffering is not a good excuse for not having kids. Even if you are rich or poor, does not mean you can't give your children trauma. Poor or rich, I think not having children is a selfless choice for humanity. Anyway, guys, I would love to hear from you too. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. See you in the next video and stay safe.